Welcome to the Absolute Business Mindset podcast. Today we have Rakshit, who is the CEO and founder of Mystery Vibe, a company that specializes in medical devices for sexual health. With a background of biomedical engineering, Sum is passionate about creating innovative solutions to improve sexual health and well-being. In this episode, he discusses his journey in the field of medical devices for sexual health. He emphasizes the importance of perseverance and patience in the medical industry, where it can take years to make a real impact. Some also highlights the need for education and awareness in the field of sexual health and the challenges of addressing stigmas and taboos. He shares insights into the development of their products, including devices for erectile dysfunction and pelvic pain, and the clinical trials and research involved. Some also discusses the future of Mystery Vibe and their goal to reach more people and make a positive impact on sexual health. This podcast will educate and inspire with stories of entrepreneurs' journey, and we also explore their why. You will learn from successes and failures to be the best version of yourself. Today we have Rakshit, who is the CEO and founder of Mystery Vibe, which is a medical devices for sexual health. Hello, Sum. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to talk about your journey, your successes, your failures, different aspects of your career, and then we'll go deep into your expert subject, which is a very different one. Medical devices for sexual health is not my usual purse of people that I get on the podcast. So it's going to be really interesting understanding your business and listening to a little bit about that as well. So thank you for joining me. The podcast is called The Absolute Business Mindset. What does a business mindset mean to you?
I think for me, it's really about perseverance. And this is especially true for medical, where most things take 10 years. To make a real impact. So with medical devices, and I think the only thing that is slightly nuanced about sexual health is there are stigmas and challenges, which might not be that relevant in, let's say, if you were working in diabetes or heart disease, right? So beyond that, it's pretty much the same, is a lot of R&D, a lot of trials, regulatory compliance, getting lots of patients on board, lots of doctors on board. And the whole process is a lot of trial and error, lots of redoing things to get to the point where it's actually useful and significantly useful in solving whatever it is that we set out to solve, whether it's pain to childbirth, prostatitis, dryness after menopause, various areas. Yeah. But yes, I think the perseverance, above all, is the key to a business mindset generally, I think, but especially in our case where nothing happens in 1 or 2 years.
Right, because you do a lot of research. As you said, you do a lot of R&D on the products, and we will get into that. But I think that whole point about perseverance is really important. As an entrepreneur and a business owner, persistence and perseverance is one of the key traits to be able to do that. And I know you said like your products take time to be able to develop and then be able to go to market. But I do think even other business owners, just to have faith and have persistence that you're going to achieve the goals that you're going to do. And another word that which you haven't used is patience. And I think that's something that's super important for business owners and entrepreneurs, is to have patience. What's your view on patience?
Oh, massively, very important. This is particularly true for medical trials. So, for example, we've been running a trial with NHS in Whitechapel called Barts Hospital. Yep. And the trial started over 3 years ago. And it's a trial on vulvar pain using one of our devices called POCO. And, there are lots of things, and obviously COVID in between. That delayed it, but it's still running and it's going well. And it might be another year before we see the results. But the patience is key, because these things just can't be rushed. You cannot call NHS and say, "Can you do this faster?" Yeah. It doesn't work like that. So, but it's so valuable that these things happen, and they happen properly with the right level of protocols, the ethics approvals, the multi-site trial, the control groups, all that are properly collected properly, the users selected properly, and all of this takes time. But the value of doing properly and taking the time and the patience to wait for it is when the results are published, it's acknowledged worldwide as being very credible. And that's the foundation of everything in medical, is the credibility of the efficacy.
Amazing. Okay. So I believe you went to school in Calcutta, yeah? So you were born in India.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Oh, that's an easy one. So I studied in an Irish Catholic school called St. Xavier's in Calcutta. And the only thing I remember from my 12 years, so I joined when I was 6 and I finished when I was 18, is be kind. And that's it. You know, it doesn't matter because it was all priests from Dublin and wearing white robes. So very saintly people. And, you know, they're like, maybe you'll be good at math. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be good at something else. Maybe you will remember the trigonometry. Most likely you won't. Right. But the only thing you should remember is to be kind. And if you can do that, then your education is complete. From a school perspective, it's just be kind.
It's being a good person. I think I try and treat my competitors, my colleagues, my people who work for me with kindness and generosity and supporting people. And I think it's a super, like Gary Vee's been talking a lot about kindness and sort of showing that business. And although he originally was grind and hustle and billing and building businesses, I think that message in the last couple of years where he's talking about being kind to your fellow man, whoever they are, I think is a really nice message. So in India, being brought up as a Christian, how was it being in a country where Christianity is very much the minority? How did you feel growing up there?
So it's interesting. So I'm born a Hindu, so as in from a family perspective, but I was educated in a Catholic school. But because it is so secular, for example, I didn't know what anyone's religion was in the class. Like it wasn't something you asked or cared about because everybody is just a person, right? And it was irrelevant what they call their God. So I think that was one of the best things about growing up in a Catholic school in a dominant Hindu country where, there is a church in my school and it's up to you whether you want to go there or not. And every week we'd have a class of, say 40 minutes called value education. And it's about values rather than about religion. And the values, exactly the kindness and generosity and that stuff, which is a religion agnostic, that they imbued in all the students, where it was kind of irrelevant if you called your God Buddha, Jesus, or Muhammad.
Right. Okay, interesting. So you grew up in Calcutta, then you did a PhD in Bath, UK. What made you decide to come to the UK?
Topic, actually. So I was always very interested in engineering. So I did my undergrad in electronics. And then I was very interested in biomedical engineering as my postgrad, PhD, postdoc, all of that. So I wanted to find a really actionable area of biomedical. And one of the areas that was quite hot back then was biometrics, which is commonplace now, like when you look at your phone and it can pay, all it's doing is recognizing your face, and that's face biometric. Or if you use fingerprint to do something. So now it's so common you don't even realize you're using biometrics all the time. But 20 years ago, it was a very novel thing. So I looked at areas I really like that will be very interesting, and then applied to lots of different universities where I really liked the topics. And the Bath happened to be the one I liked the most because they were focusing on iris. So again, biomedical, but on the biometric side of iris recognition, working with the Plymouth Hospital on ophthalmology. And then we spent 4 years building a system which is used in many cameras in the airports, which look at your irises and recognize you. So that's what I did in Bath.
Oh, amazing. And then you spent 7 years in management consultancy in various different companies. So what did you do there, and why did you choose management consultancy initially?
So I did mostly operations excellence, and the goal for that was going into big corporates, typically, mostly public sector, figuring out what problems they have, and then build solutions. A lot of it was technology solutions because that's where my passion lies, building really useful tech that can solve whether it's biomedical issues or things like we did in counterterrorism, airport security, or in finance, like money laundering, safeguards. So various projects, but all of them had the same underlying principle: is can we bring the best available technology at scale to solve significant issues.
And did you like the environment? Because management consultancy, you're traveling around a lot. You're going into companies and sort of solving problems. Was it an environment that you enjoyed?
I loved the clients. I loved the work. I loved the problem solving. I did not like the travel. Okay. The travel was intense because it's not like you travel and live somewhere. You typically travel on a Monday, come back on a Friday, and then you do it again. And it's only novel for a few weeks, and after that, it's quite tiring. So apart from the travel, I loved everything else.
But you stayed with it for 7 years. Was that a specific career goal that you wanted to achieve? Like, was there a plan?
No, I wanted to just understand business management because, when you study a PhD and postdoc, you have no idea about business or even simple things like project management. It's just something you train on. So I felt like I needed that grounding in business, which, you might do an MBA for, but in my case, I joined as a graduate, and there was a really good graduate program, which spanned 2 years, including a lot of classroom training. So it's super valuable. And then after passing through the graduate program, I spent another 5 years just learning different things and being on client. And also during that time, I was thinking what to do next in terms of biomedical. And it took us a while, as in the same team from Bath, it took us a while to figure out what exactly is it that we want to spend our next 10 years working on. And that's where the discussions around sexual health came up, where major life events happen. You have a child, you have pain, you have menopause, you have dryness, you have prostate cancer, recovering from that, erectile dysfunction. So all of these things happen, which is just normal in the daily course of life. Like menopause is an inevitability. Pregnancy is, again, very common. 60% of women will have a baby. So the thing is, none of this is odd. None of this is special. None of this is niche. But not many people talked about it. Most people would just either ignore the fact that they have pain or dryness, or don't know what to do about it. So as we kind of spent those years, so one of my co-founders, Rob, he was in Nokia back then. And again, he was having similar conversations, both internally in the family and externally with others. And the thing was very much, there is a lot of need to solve this area, but not enough discussions or enough solutions out there. So that's when we felt, okay, this is now the time to go back to what we really know, which is biomedical, having learned enough in corporate and business stuff, and then work in an area which seems like there is a huge gap.
Okay. So I think you've answered this, but I'm just interested. What was that thought process that you had? Because so I spent 14 years in corporate, and then left and started my own businesses, about 3 or 4 years ago. But there's bravery, there's risk, there's chances of failure by setting up your own business. What made you want to move from the security of a job into starting a business?
We'll be back after a quick break.
If you're an online business owner and you want to learn what's working right now to generate leads, grow your following, and get paying clients and customers, then be sure to check out the Digital Trailblazer podcast. Each week, we feature online business owners just like you who are launching and scaling their businesses, and we reveal exactly what they're doing to rise above the competition to build a successful, profitable online business. And what's really unique about the Digital Trailblazer podcast is that you're going to learn these strategies directly from the business owners who are putting them into action and getting results. So head over to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms, or just head over to digitaltrailblazer.com for links to all of our episodes.
The biggest thing was all of us from Bath, working on this together, we knew that was always the goal. And being in corporate was a thing that we are doing to learn, to gain knowledge, to gain management experience. But that was never the end goal. It wasn't to stay and do corporate forever. It was always that there's something we studied for a long, long time, something we're passionate about. That's what we are really good at. We need to go back to that. It was more like, we are on a break from our core work to gain some experience, which we can't really gain in an academic setting.
Yeah.
So it was very much a matter of how long would we be on that break, rather than, rather than the other way around, like, we are in a corporate career and now we're going to quit and do something different. It was very much, we are a biomedical team. We are taking a break from biomedical because we feel like we need a lot more knowledge in running a business before we can start something even bigger.
So what did you learn from being in business, in corporate, in management consultancy, which when you started your business and through the years of the business, the 9 years of your business, what was the biggest lesson learned that has helped you in your business?
I think quite a lot of things, but the summary of it is, it's not who you know or what you know, is knowing who knows what. And that kind of is the key to being a very good consultant, is figuring out, let's say, a good project example would be Department for Transport, where we went in to build a massive nationwide transport security system. And the system was used to look after all the airport security, right? So now, of course, you don't go in knowing everything about airport security, but knowing a lot about management, a lot about getting things together, a lot about building tech. But there would be so many experts distributed across the country within that department, which is massive, and finding those people, bringing them on your side to really help you with their knowledge and time, and getting it all together to deliver the best possible outcome. So it's because it's impossible for you to know everything. That's a given.
Yeah.
And it's also not just knowing the person, but it's also knowing what exactly is it that the person is really, really good at. So that's why, so it's probably one of the first things I learned. That sentence is, it's not who you know or what you know, it's knowing who knows what. And I think that applied really well in building a company from scratch, where you do know certain things really well, but that's it. It's finding all the best people, whether it's to hire, to partner with, to work with. Yeah.
Okay, let's go deep into Mystery Vibe. So we've touched on it, that it's biomedical and it's about helping men and women with. So just tell me a little bit more about the business, and what it does, and what maybe some of the products that you provide for them.
Yes, I can bring a couple from the lab in a second. So the key thing for us is delivering a specific vibration, which is 100 hertz frequency, to points where it needs either pain relief or blood flow, right? So that's the underlying principle on everything we do. And this is clinically proven to help. So that's the baseline that we ride on. Yeah. It's this kind of frequency will help with these things. So the areas that we work on, like erectile dysfunction, is a really simple example. It's very much to do with blood flow, right? So if you have good blood flow to your penis, you will have a good erection, and if not, you won't. In order to help with blood flow, we then create devices that are very malleable. So the entire structure, whether it's the material science, the electronics, the tensile strength, everything is custom made in our labs in Surrey, in Guildford, and it's end to end. So we start from a concept all the way till early stage manufacturing. So manufacturing, say, a few thousand units.
So quick question.
And then,
okay, let's delve deep into erectile dysfunction. Why not? So what is the actual product that you're actually producing to help the man if they've got like slow or low blood flow into their penis?
Two products. One is called Tenuto 2 and one is called Tenuto Mini. And the products very much are designed to adapt the stretchy vibration devices. They stretch and they adapt to the penis head. That's the first bit, the glands, where it delivers a 360 vibration all around in order to create blood flow. Then once the penis is erect, it can stretch it to then slide it back to the base of the penis in order to constrict it. So it takes care of two very important things. One is the arousal to deliver blood, and two, the constriction to hold the blood. And there's a third element, which is less important for some, but very important for others, which is the ejaculation. So the challenge with a circular ring, which is what would be an alternative, is that it constricts the blood flow, but it also constricts the semen flow. So if you're trying to get your partner pregnant, that wouldn't work for you. And that is quite a big use case when it comes to ED, are people who need to get erect, have intercourse, and ejaculate in order to get pregnant, but they can't with the ring. So the third element of our device is it's designed to be flexible and constrict, but have a gap at the bottom. So all of this is very much driven by, again, it's a long process of design, trial, redesign, trial. I would say Tenuto 2 is probably 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Of R&D, of design, trial, and Tenuto 1 feedback, and then now Tenuto 2, before it got to a point where we were very happy with the product and has a very high efficacy of 90% plus, but very much driven by a lot of trial and error, and a lot of research on material science, compositions, mixtures, temperatures, moistures, a lot of research on electronics to make them small enough, malleable enough, a lot of research on motors to have very limited size, because these can't be bulky, but deliver a huge amount of power at the right frequency. So all of that R&D is what we do in our labs in Surrey.
What's your role in the business as CEO? Do you get involved in the R&D, or is that for another team, or do you manage that? Like, what's your role?
I would say my main role is bringing the two pieces together of the medical feedback, doctor insights, advice on one side, and the R&D team on the other side building it. So I spend a couple of days a week in the lab, and the rest of the week in London, going to hospitals, or in US, which is where a lot of our sales are, going to conferences, or again, going to hospitals, meeting clinics, doctors. So I would say the work is kind of 80-20, where 80% of my time is spent on the medical side, and user feedback and patient feedback and doctor feedback, understanding that, collecting all that, and then going back and forth to really figure out what is it that we need to change or build new. And then 20% is in the lab, working with the team and building or just feedback and assessing.
You don't want to lose that engineering side of your role. It sounds like is that's what you started
yes.
as, and you sound
that's
like
that's my favorite part for sure. Yes, being in the lab is definitely the favorite bit. But what I learned, and this is something really thanks to consulting, what I learned is you gain so much more by spending time with your users, whoever that user is. And the user could be a doctor, user could be a patient, user could be just a general non-patient person. But it is one of those things I wouldn't have thought of pre-consulting. When I was a researcher, I would spend probably 95% of my time in the lab and researching, and 5% maybe talking to a user, because I'm sure I was guilty of the same viewpoint a lot of researchers have, is we know what to build better than anyone else, so we're just going to build it.
Yeah.
So,
and that's and one of the questions that just is springing to my mind is about sales and marketing. So do you get contracts through NHS in the UK? Do you get contracts with medical suppliers in the US? How do or do you do your own sales and marketing? It's
a mixture. So doctors recommend and sell our products, and people can buy directly from our websites, and it is a mixture on the direct as well. So often doctors will simply tell their patients, go to the website and buy it. In some cases, doctors stock the products and sell it directly. And the nuance here is really interesting, where not everyone wants to go to a doctor. And that is a challenge in sexual health, is often, let's say, going back to the same discussion we were having about ED, if you have issues with erection, you might not want to see a GP, or might not want to see a urologist, andrologist, because you're not keen to talk about it. Yeah. And sadly, that is the 80-20 rule, where 80% don't talk about it till much later. The thing then is they would search Google, they might, look for answers, and some are good answers, like NHS's website, WebMD website, and some are not so good answers, like, people trying to sell fake Viagra and stuff like that. So the piece that we have to do is much wider than supplying clinics and hospitals, because maybe 20 or 30% of the people will ever get to that point. So if we want to help the 70-80% who are simply searching online, you have to make it easy and accessible and available to them, which is why a big part of it is our direct-to-consumer marketing and sales.
Yeah, amazing. Did you bootstrap the business, or did you go out and get funding for it?
So we raised money, because with medical devices, the first thing is obviously the R&D setup, which is very expensive, and then the actual R&D, then the compliance. So it's one of those areas where you need to raise money for quite a long time before you get to a point where it's valuable. Yeah. And we were very lucky, because we raised money from angels. So angel investors, like doctors, our old colleagues, etc. And they invested very much on the basis that we are trying to solve a problem that affected them or their family or friends, right? And it was very much money to solve something they care about, like pain after childbirth, dryness after menopause, prostate cancer, like things that really matter to them. And it wasn't about making a quick return, because then they would be very disappointed after a few years when we are not even midway through the journey. So, I always told everybody in the beginning, it's a 10-year plan. Right. We are not going to be doing anything significant in 5 years. So we only got our FDA in 2019. So that's 5 years in. We just got our FDA. Then we started clinical trials. Then we finished that. The initial ones, we have obviously like 10 plus running now. We have 3 published papers. So, and now we have 100,000 patients. But all of that is 9.5 years in, right? So it's a very slow process.
It's a 10-year plan that you've had. And I don't want to know like numbers or anything like that.
Oh, so no, it's public. Because it's on Crunchbase and stuff. So we raised 10 million pounds in total over that time to build 6 devices, get them through compliance. They're all FDA. They all have clinical trials, etc. So we built 6 devices, got to 100,000 patients, and built our channel. So all of that in 10 million pounds.
So are you profitable now?
Yes, as of this year. By the end of this year, when our year finishes, we'll be profitable. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's great news. So we've talked about erectile dysfunction. That's a male problem. Let's talk about some of the things you do for females as well. We do have female listeners as well. What maybe mention a couple of products or one specifically that you help?
So the actually our first product, even before Tenuto, which was the erectile dysfunction product, is Crescendo. So Crescendo is literally 2 fingers. That's all it is. It mimics 2 fingers. It bends. You can bend it, reach, and stimulate exactly where you need on the pelvic floor. And it's very much to do with pelvic pain dysfunction. So it can happen after childbirth. It can happen other times. But what the standard of care is a pelvic floor therapist inserting 2 fingers, reaching the points, massaging them, and trying to alleviate the pain, which obviously means you have to go to a therapist, which takes time and money. Whereas with a device, ideally you go once to the therapist, and if you can't access that, we have a very visual guide written by therapists so that you can just follow the pictures and text, and you will be able to do it to yourself. So that allows the patient or the user, even if they're not struggling with pain, maybe they just want to improve their arousal, they want to improve their orgasms, they want to improve their blood flow, just whatever the reason, they can simply self-help. So that's our Crescendo device.
Amazing. And was there one product that you maybe started that you thought you had an idea to go with and like a failure? Was there something that you started to go along a particular course and you had to pivot or you had to change? Is there one of the products which you were going down a certain pathway and you've
Loads.
Okay.
So just to give you the examples, 2 examples, one of Tenuto, one of Crescendo. When we first started designing Tenuto, we looked at the entire range of erect penis diameters. Yep. And we built the first product, and this is 1 year in. Yeah, because it takes a year to get to something that you can test on a human. 1 year in, we built the product. We think it's going to fit everybody. We start running trials, and then it's too big for most people, right? And if it's too big, it does nothing because it needs to be constrictive. It needs to be tight. It needs to hold the blood. So if it's too big, it's literally pointless, right? Because the problem was, and this is obviously early days, and we didn't realize the way to design is not to please 100% because you will never please 100%. And obviously naively, we thought, why shouldn't our product be 100%? Except that the very, very few people who are in the 100%, whose penis diameter is huge, it's not the representative sample of the 90% who fall under a much smaller curve. So we literally went back to the drawing board, and a year later had a product which did something, and then a year later a product which was good, and then a couple of years later a product which was very, very good. So that's just a really simple example of one metric that meant the entire product was completely useless. So that's one example. And then the other one, so we had a lot of people tell us that they were using Crescendo, which is a pelvic pain device, on their lower abdomen, just placing it on their tummy for period pain. So we thought, okay, fine. If people are using it, let's do a trial. So we ran a trial. Trials obviously take a while. So at the end of the trial, the feedback was the user experience doesn't work. So the trial failed. The vibrations work. It does help with pain relief, which is great. But the problem is a period pain lasts for 3 hours. In many cases, maybe even longer. You can't physically hold a big device which is vibrating with your hands on your tummy for 3 hours. It just doesn't work, right? And it wasn't designed for that. So what that led to, yes, the trial failed. We didn't, get any publications out of it. But what that led to is feedback to create our device, which is coming up in a year. It's 2 years in already. It's a very slim, sticky, rounded rectangular vibrator, which has it's soft silicon, has motors which run for 5 hours, and extremely quiet, so you can't hear it. And you literally just stick it like a body safe sticky bra. You stick it on the lower abdomen. You turn it on. You don't hear it. You feel the vibrations. It alleviates your pain. You wear your clothes on top and you get on with your day. Right. So that addresses all the feedback that we got. So the best thing of all the failures is that it led to either the product getting better or a new product. And that's why we love all of these. It's always painful when things take forever, right? But it's the perseverance and patience which lead to incredibly effective products or brand new products we would never even have thought of.
This is a bit of a silly question, but it just popped into my head while you were talking. What do you say to people if you go to a social function or you go to a party and they say, "So Sum, what do you do? What do you say with
I
that?"
say the same thing.
Yeah, fantastic.
I say the same thing. I say,
Even though there is a taboo about some of these areas, and people might feel like, I don't feel uncomfortable speaking about this, but I know people, friends of mine and family members, that would feel very uncomfortable about this. But you just say, I
think it's to do with being very factual about it, right? So if you're factual, then there is no taboo. So for example, last week, I was in the House of Commons reception because Lloyd's Bank did a Business Excellence Awards reception and they invited us. Everyone was from very different areas, oil companies, banks, education companies. We were the only medical company there, and no one knew anyone. And it was a very formal setting, wear a suit, everybody's very proper. Same thing, what do you do? Like, I work in urology, gynecology, creating devices, pelvic pain, and people are like, okay, I get that. And then what's brilliant is that starts conversation. Like, I was talking to one of the people from a bank, and she said that they just started doing seminars on menopause to help their employees tackle the effects that menopause has on their work, on their ability to think clearly during the perimenopause phase, and what they can do to help. And they are going to do the same soon for new moms. So the thing is, when I start talking about what we do, instead of people, reacting as if there is a stigma, we're very lucky that people react with, let's talk more, because this is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the end game for your business? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to run it for another 50 years? What's the end game for you?
So our goal is to get our products in the hands of lots of people. Yeah. So 100,000, even though sounds a decent number for a small company, is not even scratching the surface, right? Just to give you an example, one of the things we want to do next year is include our pelvic pain device in every new mom box. So you have a kid, you get a box, it has nappies, it has milk bottles, and it will have a device with instructions. This is how you can address your pelvic pain, right? But to do that at a national and international scale, which is millions of units, you need a big corporate to roll that out. It's just not feasible for a small company. So our goal is, at some point in the next couple of years, to be part of a bigger group, but to retain that R&D that we do, retain that brand that we have built, with the distribution and network that a big corporate brings, to get these into the hands of people. So our goal is to continue working. We have a huge product roadmap for the next 10 years. We want to continue building that. We want to reach more people. We want to do more education. But what we are not good at is building 20 million units to roll out to NHS in a matter of months. That is simply not possible for our scale.
Distribution is your hardest barrier. Are you doing
Correct
printing for?
No, that's only for prototypes. It's all proper manufacturing in big factories in Hong Kong, medical manufacturer. So it's not something that they can scale that. That's not the problem. But there's two things. One is capital. If you want to manufacture 20 million units, you need, say, 100 million pounds, right, as upfront capital. And let's say, even if you can get the capital, you then need to service it. So if you have 20 million customers, they need support and help. Yes, in theory, we could build that team, but it is pointless building that team if someone already has a team, right? So you see, there's no value then of us building all that. And it won't be an insignificant thing. It will be a significant investment and effort to build a team to do something that a corporate, let's say an example would be, say, Philips Healthcare, right? Yeah. They have that support network. They sell millions of units every week, probably. Yeah. They have that support network. They have the capital. They have the distribution. They don't need to buy that from somebody else. What they do need to buy is innovation, credibility, to add to their portfolio. So where there is value, we always invest. Where there is really no end value, like building a massive support network for millions of customers, which if a big corporate acquired us would say, oh, can you fire all these people? Which would be devastating, for that. So that's why we've always built everything in a way that we are unique in what we do. And there is nothing we do that somebody else does better.
So would you look to partner, or would you look to merge or be acquired?
I think in medical, what is very common, and that happens to almost every medtech company, is you get to a point where you have enough users, proven efficacy, all your regulatory stuff is done, you have insurance, reimbursement, and then you become part of a bigger group, because then the group does all the distribution and you continue doing R&D. So, and I think for us that is equally relevant, because we can then rely on the group to do distribution, which fulfills our aim of getting it into the hands of millions of people. Whereas we, with a small team of under 20 people, so we're less than 20 people in the whole company, can continue to creating amazing products like the period pain coming out next year. We're working stuff for spinal injury patients. So there's loads of really exciting things we want to do, which then frees up our time to focus on that and get those out faster.
There is an element of education that you need to do as well. Like you say, some people might search for it online and find your website, which is fantastic, and they can then purchase. But equally, there might be conditions that are not as well known that you're helping, and the whole education piece is super important for you to show that you can help with those different situations, those different pain relief that you can do. So I think that's a piece that sounds like
that's a really big piece. So I think on average we write 200 to 300 different pieces a month of different education content on our website. That's a big part of it. And we have a team in New York who then reaches out to journalists to try and create stories to get those education out. Because there's two parts. One is obviously the content, but the content being on our site will be read by a few 100,000 people. But the content on, say, New York Times will be read by a few 100 million people. And that's the piece that makes the big difference. Yeah. So again, that's a whole other area that we focus heavily on. And we like to think that we are the leader in that space of creating education spanning health and pleasure, which no one else does. Because every company takes a side. They either decide we're only going to be medical and that's it, or we're only going to be pleasure and that's it. Now, the challenge with that is most people, no one thinks like that in a real life scenario. You don't think I am a person who only goes to a doctor. It's not like that. Okay, you do go to a doctor if you have a problem, but that's it, right? Rest of the time, you think of sex as fun, as pleasure, as a happy thing. You don't think sex is. It's not like cancer. It's only one solution, which is medical. That's why sexual health is so nuanced. It's not about it being a clinical thing. It's about it being a wellness thing where, yes, there are problems which need clinical solutions, but for everything else, maybe you just want something to spice up your bedroom. Yeah. And that's the goal we've always had, is how can we make it extremely approachable and pleasurable and fun while being a medtech company.
Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need a quick-fire answer. First question is, what was the best decision that you've made?
Best decision I've made is raising twice the money and having twice the time for all our rounds than what I thought I would need. And I can't take credit for that. Our early investors told us, no matter what you think you are capable of, multiply it by 2, right, raise double the money and allocate double the time. And then you won't have, then you will have happy investors. So I think that is the best decision and advice I got.
And so the next question is, what's the best piece of advice? So if we put that to the side, what's another piece of advice?
What's a different piece of advice is, this is slightly different from my school one. It's also be kind, but be kind in a different way. So be kind to your team, to partners, to others, because you don't know what they're going through. So it's slightly nuanced, much more on the business setting. Is what you see on the surface is often not what is underneath. So the default setting should always be kind and patient in dealing with everything. And that could be something as simple as a project running late. Very normal. Nothing special about that. But there are a million reasons why it is, right? So it's that, be kind and patient with everything, because you don't know what the other person's going through, is probably the best advice I got.
I think that's brilliant. Who's helped you most in your career?
Who's helped me most in my career? I think my first boss at Deloitte, he's the global head of AI, a guy called Costi Pericos. He was my mentor from the day I joined, because he was my, what happens in big companies is you have a graduate training program where you kind of go somewhere away. It's like you go away somewhere, you live in a hotel for a few weeks, and you have a very intensive training program. So he was the room coach for me, and also my head of my group. So I have known him since 2008. And then when I left to start Mystery Vibe, he was extremely supportive. He said, you're doing something useful. And he became an investor multiple times in our company, and I meet him regularly. He still, helps me. He's now guiding me with AI because he's obviously at the forefront of it. So over the last 15 years, he's the person I have talked to the most and got the most help from. So I would say definitely him. Amazing. My first boss.
That's amazing. That was your first boss, and he's still having an impact. Tell me about a regret that you have.
Regret? I'm not sure. I mean, like with the failures I was talking about, I feel like I really cherish them more now as I get older, because I gain so much from them and I learn so much from them, and it helps me with doing something better. So often I would, at least when I was young, I would see failures as regrets. I should have done things differently. Like Tanut is a perfect example. I shouldn't have tried to do 100%. I should have aimed for 80%. And that was, that delayed us by a year. So in theory, that should be a regret. But what we learned from that made the product much better than if it was okay. Because often if a product is okay, then you're like, okay, this is fine. Let's just get it out there. Yeah. But if it doesn't work, you go back and you spend double the time or double the effort to make sure it's better. Yeah. So I would say what typically would have been regrets from the failures have been such valuable lessons that I don't think I have any that I regret doing.
Okay.
Just because, yes, it led to failures. Yes, it led to pain, loss of money and time. But it is probably more valuable than the successes. And I think I can actually explain this better with the PayPal example, where PayPal struggled during its years before it IPO'd or sold. It struggled in everything they did because no one was ready for online payments. They were trying to do, something that just the world wasn't ready for. And they sold for a decent money, but what they are valued today, it's a fraction of what they made personally. So they didn't make big bucks. None of them became billionaires out of it, right? But what they're called the PayPal mafia. So the bunch of people who worked in PayPal, people like Tesla guy, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, etc. The whole team then ended up creating amazing companies like LinkedIn, etc. Only because they had the toughest ride in every possible way with PayPal. They had to learn everything the hard way, and they became incredibly good entrepreneurs because their life was so tough. Whereas let's say Facebook probably was an easy ride. It was a better product than what exists, but they went from zero to success quite quickly. And often it's cited as the dream of being an entrepreneur. But I think that is the dream, which is more luck than anything else. Yeah. Right place, right time, good product, but there were other products in that space anyway. Yeah. So I'm not sure that the team who created Facebook would be able to create a lot of other companies as much as PayPal would.
Pain and suffering and things like that are sometimes what fuels us to be innovative and try something new and go outside the box. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a really, really profound way of explaining that answer. So thank you. What are you most proud of?
I am most proud of our medical paper on genitopelvic pain. And it's also on my LinkedIn. It says our proudest moment. And because it showed a 5x improvement in pain within 12 weeks. What that means is, so genitopelvic pain is the most common thing that happens to a mom. Okay. It's like 86%, which I assume is 100%, because not everyone says it right. So let's just assume everyone who has a kid has pelvic pain, which is very normal. But what is not nice is the stat that 50% still have it 2 years later.
Right.
So that is not good. Yeah. And it's purely to do with lack of information, lack of therapy, lack of just access to healthcare. So it's huge, right? It is literally the single biggest thing that affects moms. And the study showed that within 12 weeks, using 3 times a week, the patients change from a pain score, female sexual function index, FSFI, of 0.4 to 2.4. So the change was 5x. And what that means is they started with a huge amount of pain that they can't sit down. And they finished 3 months with no pain, so they can just get on with their life. Wow. And that is so significant that it is still, and that paper came out like a couple of years ago. It's still, and we've had, multiple papers after that. But to me, in our 10-year journey, that is still our proudest moment. And I think it is my personal proudest moment, because my proudest moment before that was in 2009 when my first paper came out in Nature. As an academic, that's kind of the dream. Yeah, when you do a PhD and postdoc, all you ever dream about is the ultimate publication. So one of our research was in cataract surgery back when I was working in eye recognition with Plymouth. And then we discovered that if you put atropine drops, which you can buy from Boots, it's an over-the-counter drug, and you don't need anything. So if you want to cheat an iris recognition system, all you have to do is go to Boots, buy a drop, put it on your eye muscles will completely collapse. You will do it on one eye because obviously you need to see. And it's a temporary thing, it gets back within a few hours. And then you can cheat any iris recognition system in the world. And we discovered that. And then UK and all other global biometrics had to change their policy from they were going to do just iris to then becoming multi-biometric, because before that paper was published, everyone assumed iris was impossible to cheat. Yeah. So it was significant enough that it got published in Nature. And that was my proudest moment.
Amazing.
Before this.
And what does legacy mean to you?
We leave behind a world that is exponential better than the world we came in whatever little thing we do, right? And hopefully in our case, we will leave behind a world where something like post-childbirth pain is a non-issue, right? Because then it's exponentially better than when we came in.
Amazing. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
som@mysteryvibe.com. SOUM@mysteryvibe.com.
Amazing. Look, Som, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating. And I say this is not my usual area, but it's been so interesting hearing what you're doing and the areas that you're really impacting. And as you say, that a lot of these things are often done like people are suffering in silence and they don't feel comfortable talking about these things. So I think it's a massive credit to you and your business to be out there talking about, as you say, equally pleasure and pain as well that you're supporting. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.